Madam Mayor, Ed
Hi,
Markey.
Senator. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you for joining us today.
This is exciting. I'll talk about free bus anytime, and with you, it's a treat.
No, thank you. Yeah, this is a great opportunity to talk about what the future should look like. So, thank you for doing this. And are we ready to go?
Yeah.
So let's just start. And we're going to have a great conversation with Michelle Wu, our pioneering um, mayor of the city of Boston, our Green New Deal mayor, and talk a little bit about her concept, her announcement of a new bus program for the city. And first of all, thank you, my friend, for joining today in this important conversation. And could you talk a little bit about how your concept for the new bus program would help to make Boston a Green New Deal city, a climate justice city?
Well, first, thanks again for having me, and thanks everyone for listening in. We are so excited on the city side that this is moving forward. It's something that I and Senator and so many of our community leaders have been advocating for years and years and years. So what we announced just a little bit ago is that starting March 1st, three key bus routes in the city of Boston will be free to board. The 23 bus, the 28 bus, and the 29 bus for 2 whole years. And we're launching this pilot in order to show what's possible and to show that it's really life-changing when you take down barriers for people to get where they need to go, to school, to jobs, to houses of worship and youth organizations. We've gotten a taste of this in Boston thanks to Mayor Janey launching the 28 bus pilot for a couple months. And we've seen in other parts of the state, like in Lawrence, that when you do it for a longer term, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, well, I go back, you know, a couple of years. You and I and Ayanna Pressley, our great Congresswoman, we were in Mattapan, right at the Mattapan
That's right.
community, right at the Mattapan Community Health Center. That was in July of 2020, and we had a press conference talking about this issue in terms of how important it was for people in the community to have free access to healthcare services or their ability to get to a job, just because of how expensive it would be for them to be able to use public transit and what percentage of their income it would consume if we didn't find a way of making it much more affordable for low income families who spend nearly 30% of their household income on transportation expenses. So, can you talk about that and what it means for those low income families, especially to have free access to buses and trains in the city of Boston?
Yeah, and that was a great day in Mattapan Square because not only did we get to take a walk and visit with some of our key community leaders and small businesses in the area, we were celebrating the news that you and Congresswoman Presley were filing federal legislation, groundbreaking legislation, once again with the Freedom to Move Act, which would be a huge boon to help incentivize and fund the types of things that we're doing in Boston in many more places. But we've heard, there's clear data, right? So MIT several years ago had run a study where a number of families who qualified for benefits in Massachusetts were given 50% discounted MBTA cards. And so this wasn't even fully free, but just a halfway discount on public transportation. And they studied not only how much those families use the T before and after getting this discounted card, but also the ways in which they were using, where were they going, and what were they trying to do. And the numbers were very clear, right? It's not surprising for those of us who ride public transportation what you need it to do and what you use it for, but they found that families' usage of the T jumped by more than 30%. And at a time when generally usage of public transportation is dropping, and that they were using it to be able to go to medical appointments and the grocery store and fundamental needs that people are rationing every single day because it's expensive to have to get on the T. We've heard these stories in Lawrence. We've heard these stories on the 28 bus. I've talked to young people who live in Mattapan and go to Roxbury Community College, and what before it was every couple days just to get to and from class. This young man, Brendan, had to ask his mom or try to find $2 from someone. Now he never has to worry about how to get to class, and if he needs to go back and forth an extra couple times to stop at a job or do something else. And so it is truly transformational, and it's something that's necessary as we're coming out of the pandemic. The 28 bus, for example, as we saw people really leaving public transportation in a lot of ways, either because of remote work or worries during the pandemic, the 28 bus became the highest ridership route in the entire city, basically same levels as pre-pandemic, went during this period of the free bus fares.
And Madam Mayor, for people who don't know, what part of the city does the 28 bus connect people to?
So the 28 bus starts in, well, I guess starts or ends depending on which direction you're going, but it runs from Mattapan Square along Blue Hill Ave to Warren. So basically from Mattapan through Dorchester, Grove Hall, Nubian Square to Ruggles, which is right by Longwood Medical area, where we have one of the fastest growing job centers anywhere in the country. The other two buses that we're talking about, the 23 bus starts in Ashmont, runs up through Dorchester Center and Grove Hall, also ending at Ruggles. And then the 29 bus, like the 28, starts in Mattapan Square and then ends up in Jackson Square. So we picked three routes that are high ridership. They're very, very, very busy. They serve communities of color. They serve many residents who qualify for benefits, who are in our lower income communities. And they also all connect in some way with some of the dedicated bus infrastructure that's being built, whether it's the Columbus Ave dedicated bus lanes or the planned Blue Hill Ave improvements. And so we really want to prove that bus service doesn't have to be how sometimes we imagine it today, which is it can be really slow, it's crowded, you never know when it's going to come, it's stuck in traffic. When we choose to put resources and make design and infrastructure policy decisions differently to prioritize people over traffic, then it can change the entire experience, and we can do so in a way that stabilizes and reinvests in our communities.
And that's why Congresswoman Presley and I put the word freedom in our Freedom to Move Act.
Love it.
So that people would know that they could just jump on the bus, no charge, get to where they had to go, work, healthcare, shopping, and kind of transform their life, because you don't want people making the decision, like you're saying, based upon whether or not you got that cash in your pocket, or that you're apportioning the cash that you have, and ultimately you don't have enough for it. So this just simplifies it for everyone. And what Congresswoman Presley and I have in our legislation is $5 billion a year for 5 years, $25 billion for a new federal grant program that would allow the states or the cities to offset the costs of providing fare free public transportation. So that would be a program that Boston, the MBTA, could use, to
It
make
would
sure,
be
yeah, that
huge, 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 huge. We know there's interest, and so many of our surrounding cities have reached out saying, we're going to try to work with the T in the same way. Let's work on some of the routes that cross not just within our own cities, but across different boundaries, right? We depict these three bus routes because they also stay entirely within the city of Boston, given the ways that the funding structure is set up. And so to have that federal partnership, to be able to unlock it at a regional and statewide and nationwide level would be absolutely huge. And that partnership, I think, is especially critical in this moment. We've talked a lot about a lot of the other things that you're working on sustainable transit, whether it's electric school buses or as part of the broader Green New Deal. Right, happy third birthday to the filing of the Green New Deal at the federal level. what are you most excited about that you're working on when it comes to transit, transportation, and sustainability here?
And you are right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I introduced the Green New Deal just 3 years ago, February of 2019. And in a large way, that has helped to transform the way in which people view all of these issues, including transportation justice. Um, and and you are clearly going to be, in my opinion, the mayor in the country once we get the Build Back Better bill passed, and we're going to get some form of it with the funding that would then help you with your electric bus.
We'll put it
Rep-
to good use. Yes.
I,
Oh,
I'm
sorry to
sorry, I
interrupt.
missed.
I'm just spilling over with excitement about it. Keep
Yeah,
going, Senator.
honestly, it's a goal which I have to have Boston be not just the Fenway Park green monster, but the whole city is a green monster, and that and you're able to use that federal funding as a way to leverage the kinds of changes that are going to be generational. Uh, and again, I think the goal has to be in the infrastructure spending, in any Green New Deal spending. It's to just deal with the reality that 45% of people lack access to public transportation, and those who rely solely on public transit are more likely to be Black, Latinx, foreign born, earn less than $30,000 a year. Could you talk a little bit about how you see transit as a justice issue?
Oh, it shows up in our residents' lives every single day. And part of what got me really charged up on this in the very, very beginning was when my family moved from the South End to Roslindale. This was, I think it was on my second year on the council. Blaze was born. We needed to find a place where we could live, have my mom live with us too. And so we were moving to a neighborhood. And I see and some folks here aren't necessarily familiar with all of Boston. So just to explain, I went from being the city councilor who lived probably the closest commute to City Hall. I could walk 20 minutes or hop on a bus or grab the Orange Line subway. Never had to think about transportation, to one of our neighborhoods that is further away. I think I became our second farthest away counselor at that point. And when you're a 45-minute commute, no matter which way you cut it, at least all of a sudden, transportation became such a heavy mental burden and emotional burden. And I was commuting in then very soon thereafter with a big double stroller with both of my kids in it on the bus to the T or the subway, where if we made it on time, it was I mean it was just like a miracle. The Between the buses getting really slowed down or too crowded or elevators being broken in the system. And I remember just having a choice every day where if we walked to wait for the bus, you never knew when it was going to come. It would be packed and crowded and stuck in traffic, because this was before we implemented the dedicated bus lane then. But the fellow ridership reflected all of Boston. Or we could walk a little bit further to the commuter rail stop, where it was pretty predictable in timing, air conditioned, and not very crowded. But the price was 3 times the ticket fare, and I would often be the only person of color on the entire train car if we went that way. And we usually, it was too expensive to do most often. So,
Mhm.
the ways in which transportation policy decisions have been made often have been the very first ways to exacerbate racial injustices. Which communities do we build highways over to bypass? So and to locate the environmental hazards and pollution near. So what we're trying to do now in Boston, and so grateful for your leadership and your partnership, is to really address many of these inequities through sustainable transit decisions, right? Trying to take down the Alston I-90 interchange with federal funding, fingers crossed, trying to get to the point where we can electrify our school buses and our commuter rail line. Massachusetts is one of the last remaining diesel commuter rail systems anywhere in the country. And so this Green New Deal framework that you have created and have been continuing to lead on is really fundamental for it's a baseline for our future.
Yeah, we can absolutely create economic equity and environmental justice at the same time. I think back to the 1960s when the cities Detroit, LA all exploded. After they did an analysis of what happened, Lyndon Johnson uh, asked for a commission to be put together. It was chaired by Governor Kerner. And one of their big conclusions was that if you're in South Central LA, if you're in, inner city America, one of the big problems was people couldn't get to where the jobs were. People
That's right.
couldn't get to where the opportunities were.
That's right.
The public transit didn't make it possible for them to get to those jobs. And what your vision is, um, I think, is the historic turning point where we're saying, let's use the public transit system to make sure that people can get to the opportunities which are going to transform their lives.
It is truly a public good, and it should be funded that way. It should be connected and treated as that fundamental. And in Boston, especially, we're proud of our legacy of always stepping up and innovating. Right, we're home to the first public school anywhere in the country, first public library, first public park, first subway tunnel, even anywhere in the country. And it's really the moment is now to take that mantle back up, and whether it's public transportation, childcare, there's so many ways in which we have places we could invest that would unlock the potential for all of us to really have a share in our prosperity coming out of the pandemic, and to have a role in shaping our future.
Yeah, could you just take that Green um, New Deal framework and kind of talk a little bit more about how you are operationalizing it on a citywide basis, in addition to a free tea? How else are you viewing a Green New Deal being implemented during your term as the mayor?
So, okay, how much time do we have? Because this would be like 2 hours. Okay, and the top line version is I'm so excited about this because we often think about climate as a national, global issue, which it certainly is. But the reality is that cities have so much potential to move us forward, to drive the momentum, and cities are where we do big things by getting the small things right. So, what that looks like for Boston, if you take the framework of a Green New Deal, meaning climate justice is racial and economic justice, that should shape every action we're taking, right? We just launched our Green Jobs program, which is modeled after Philadelphia's Power Corps program, brought on an executive director, and will be connecting young people and returning citizens and those in our community who are um, looking for opportunity to a training program in the green economy that will then open up lots of our workforce and allow us to really get resiliency projects up and running. We're looking to reframe our stormwater infrastructure to better absorb flooding, whether it's coastal flooding or storm surge or stormwater flooding. Trees are the best technology for cleaning our air, keeping the temperature down. Pretty soon, we'll be launching our Office of Food Justice. So much on the food side that we can do with urban agriculture and food production and jobs and procurement. Um, Buildings is the largest source of emissions in Boston. More than 70% of our carbon footprint in our city comes from buildings. So we have new standards to implement for new construction, pushing for net zero as quickly as we can to accelerate the decarbonization of buildings and retrofits. Transportation, we've talked about a lot already, but
Could
one
could you
other
talk
place.
could you talk a little bit about those building standards and what that could mean in terms of reduced energy consumption in Boston and using that as a model for the rest of the country?
This is huge. Well, I think I've seen you a couple times since then, but one of the things we've done together recently, Senator, is the walkthrough of the um, Boston Arts Academy building. So here's an example where we needed to find space for a amazing school, our art school in Boston that was spilling over, right? We had performing arts students going to little closets as a rehearsal space because they're growing and so successful. And the building was falling apart. So we needed to build a new building. It is now going to be net zero, feature all of the technology around heat pumps, and all that's open for the students to see and learn from. We've tapped into some of the funding sources at all levels of government to make this possible. And these young people will have the cleanest air to breathe in their schools, clean water, beautiful spaces, and we're saving money as a city because of the energy efficiency of this building too. So we need to see that kind of writ large, certainly for all new construction, but then going back and helping many of our historic buildings and our residences who live in older buildings in such a historic city to access funding upfront to make some of those solar panel installations or energy efficiency improvements too.
Yeah, my mother, when she was disappointed with me when I was 10 or 11 or 12 years old, she would just say, Eddie, your father and I, we're going to donate your brain to Harvard Medical School as a completely unused human organ, And she would say, you have to learn how to work smarter, not harder. And of course, that's what energy efficiency is. In
Exactly.
the long run, you make money. And there are some people who don't want to think long term, but if you do it, and it absolutely reduces greenhouse gases, but it saves money at the same time. And I think what you're doing is absolutely pioneering. It's going to be the model for the rest of the country, and for Congresswoman Presley and I, just this conversation once again reinforces how important it is for us to get more resources into your hands, because you are the person who is showing how all of these things interconnect, and that transportation justice, economic justice, healthcare justice, racial justice is all tied together. And if you have an interconnected plan, then it works for everyone in the community. So I just so great to talk to you, because you're like a walking, talking political antidepressant. You're so optimistic about the future.
Thank you so much, Senator, for your leadership. Always fun to catch up. And we're going to get a lot of great stuff done in this green monster of a city. But we are eager. It's a whole ecosystem here. So lots to do. And look forward to talking to you soon along the way.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate to have you be the mayor of the greatest city in America. Thank you, and thanks for joining me today, and thanks for everyone else for listening in. We're going to continue these conversations, but none better than this one we have with our great mayor of Boston. Thank you.